Hi. First off, we want to thank Olga and Paulina for organizing this event and inviting us to be a speaker. Actually, when they asked us to be a speaker at this event, we thought it was quite exciting. We hardly ever speak in front of people. We spend a lot of time in our studio, hidden away. And we saw these behind the talks we saw on the videos of the Element talks of the previous years, and we saw some great talks from people, very inspiring. So then we thought together from, well, what can we offer you guys? What can we share with you which is interesting enough to talk about? So one question we often get is, how is it to work together as a couple? How is it to work together as a couple and as a duo? And we thought, well, that's a great thing to talk about. So we're going to talk about how we work together as a couple and the benefits and the hardships of working together as a couple. And we're going to walk you a little bit through our creative process on how we approach a job together.
Oh, yeah. So, hi, everybody. Yeah, so what are we? Oh, who are we? It's a lot of times a tricky question, and it's hard to describe to people because we use a lot of different creative media to get to a final result. So, but mainly we are a creative studio. We're based in Amsterdam, and in our studio we mostly focus on still life photography, on animation. We build our own sets. And we use a lot of different materials to make those sets. I think the most important material we use is paper. And we also work a lot as art directors, and we have a big role in the creative process because we have such a specific style. People ask our point of view on how to approach a certain project. So it's actually better maybe to show you some examples of what we do to make things a bit more clear. Press.
Yeah, so we have a little video coming,
yeah,
where we compiled some work. Yeah, so let's continue. So yeah, that was an impression of what our work, a part of our work. And to understand a little about why we work together as a couple and as a duo, and why we work the way we do, it's good to understand where we actually came from. So I myself, my father was a product photographer, so I always was raised with photography around me. After high school, I started to study engineering, design, and innovation, which is a product design study. And I quickly felt limited in creativity. Gidi, we didn't know each other, and Gidi had a passion for crafts and illustration. And she started to study communication multimedia design, and also she felt limited in creativity. So we both stopped our studies and we went to the Royal Academy of Art in The Hague. And at the Royal Academy of Art in The Hague, I myself got a focus on still life photography. This is also because I loved combining the technique and actually building sets coming from a product design background. And Gidi thought her passion in fashion photography. She thought it was a good field to have a lot of creativity. And for our graduation project, we started to help each other out. And we quickly noticed the benefits of this. We got a sparring partner to bounce ideas off back and forth. And it also helped a lot with the workload, to reduce the workload. We call it creative ping pong. So, well, one thing led to another, and we worked together so good that we fell in love. And we got a wonderful daughter, and, well, you can't see it now, but there's a second one coming in 2 months. And this also was a great drive for us, because our daughter now is 5.5, and when she was born, having a child is a great motivation to make things work. It was a drive for us to work together and produce more. On the other hand, it also brought a lot of structure in us working together. We had to structurize the way we work to be able to also care for our child, which in the end is very beneficial for us to be able to work together. And we'll talk about that more later.
Yes, so behind us you can see like 2 images from like the very past. And on the left you can see one of the images which is part of Adrian's graduation project. And in the beginning he was exhibiting a lot with this project to get a little bit of exposure. On the right side you see one of the first, or I think maybe the first official collaboration between us. And we tried to combine fashion styling and handmade sets to create a story about eco-fashion. And as you can see, there's a shoe in the image, and we choose this on purpose because one of the main reasons why we did this project was to get more work. Yeah, so a good thing to do as a beginner, and what we also did is to send out all your work to competitions to get exposure, and people see your work, and hopefully also to win something.
So we sent our work into a lot of competitions, and we actually won a couple of awards, which was great publicity. And one of the awards we won was kind of a funny story. It was for the Photo Academy Award. And they've got a category hosted by Elle magazine. And we actually sent in both as me as an individual, and we sent in as a duo. But back then we didn't go under the same name we do now, but we went under the name Adidi. And it turned out we both got nominated for the same award without them actually knowing that we were the same person. In the end, I won the award, but when we actually told the art buyer at Elle hey, you also nominated us as a duo, she loved the idea, with Gidi's fashion background, that we would approach this project together. So if you look at the one at the left top with the Louboutin heels, that was actually one of the series of 6 that we won, because the award that we won from the Elle was a 6-page commissioned editorial. And this was actually a very important part of us working together as a collaboration, because we started to collaborate on that project, and they loved it, and they kept coming back monthly with new work. And each time they came to us with a different theme and a different subject and a bunch of products or an article that the visual should belong to. And pretty much every time we tried to experiment and find new techniques to visualize the narrative that belongs to the visual. And because of this, we got a great chance to expand our portfolio and give it that little bit of financial extra support in the beginning to be able to do what we do. And also we got the chance to experiment with a lot of different materials. So we tried foam, cutting foam, working with clay. We used a lot of pre-made props, which we painted. And it was just one big playing field of experimentation. And one thing that really stood out for us is paper. And this is one thing that we work mainly with at the moment. And it started with working for the Elle. We noticed that paper was a very versatile, affordable, and colorful medium with a great handmade look, which was great to create narrative in a visual.
Yes, so after a lot of experiments from Elle later, we were like perfectly tuned in with each other, and we discovered that we both have our own strengths in our collaboration. Yeah, and as a result of Elle, we also grew in a specific style, and one thing was that Adrian's influence was like the use of refined lighting, and that the photography was really up to specs. And one other thing we noticed is when we saw our work published in the magazine of Elle, that like when we used a lot of bright colors and saturated colors, they really popped out and got more attention. And this also adds to a more playful look, which we also really liked. And one other important thing, which is like very specific for our style, are the handmade sets. And back then we wanted to show people like that our sets are real and that everything is handmade instead of using pre-made props. One of the reasons our collaboration was a success is because we each had skills which the other person had less experience in or has less affinity with. So in a way, we complement each other. So to give you some examples, Adrian, for instance, he's a great communicator. He's outgoing and open. I'm more quiet, I'm reserved, and I'm more of an overthinker. Adrian is really good in keeping track of time when we are in the process of a project, whilst I am more focused on all the details, and I kind of get lost sometimes because of all the amount of details which are involved. I focus more when we start designing. I focus more on the 2D software. I focus on making the details and more the illustrative part. And Adrian is focusing more on 3D software, and he is making more the complex shapes for our sets. So if you see those words, it's all these specializations. These are the key foundations of our collaboration, and we feel like working as a duo really pushed us further than when we should have chosen not to work together. And that's why.
Yeah, so with that in mind, we quickly wanted to highlight the pros and cons of working as a duo. Two things that we already touched base on this before, it's the creative ping pong, the way it works when you're bouncing off ideas of two people. It brings you further creatively. Another pro is complementary skills. That's what Gidi just mentioned. We're a little bit of a yin and yang, and together we form a more of a whole. Another great thing is if you work together a lot as a duo, and definitely as a couple, is that we trust each other's capabilities. So we trust in each other to handle a certain part of a project without worrying that, well, it's not up to specs. And another great thing is a second opinion, just someone to look over your shoulder and give that little bit of extra feedback or that little extra reassurance that you're on the right direction. And one thing that's right in between pro and con is that we always have something to talk about. So there's never a dinner or a time that we don't have something to discuss, which obviously you can imagine is also a thing that you sometimes don't want to talk about work. And this is something, a definite con, separating work and private. So we actively need to keep work and private separated, and we need to actively make time that we keep reserved for, well, family time and not being busy with work. Another definite con is working together as a couple is shared stress. And that means that when we're working towards a deadline, and sometimes we work on quite large-scale projects, you have the same amount of stress and the same amount at the same time. Well, you can imagine that that's not what you want. And another con is two captains, one ship. And with that I mean is that we've got two strong creative minds, and that you don't want to bounce against each other and hit a wall whilst you're in the midst of a production. And that said, we do have ways that we work actively on that. So one thing we really stress is the importance of creative alignment. And we make that a very important part of our work process. So before we start on the process, we need to make sure that both our creative visions align towards a single idea. And we do this quite extensively before we start on pretty much any project, be it free work, commercial, or editorial. So I just quickly want to walk you guys through a little bit about how we approach a project. And the first stage we do is pre-production. And this is very important to communicate towards the client. But as we mentioned before, it's very important also to align ourselves as a duo. So we start off with a creative ping pong, a brainstorm, once we get the brief from the client, a broad visual orientation, brand research, and a lot of client calls, trying to get as much information from the client as we can. Once we have all that information and this base knowledge, we start to sit together and we make a broad outline together, and we try to funnel towards a direction, a global direction that we want to head in. We follow this up with bouncing off rough sketches from each other, just to know for sure that we're talking about the same thing. And then Gidi focuses on turning those rough sketches into detailed sketches, which we then send out to the client. We try to get feedback, a creative call with the client, and we go towards coloring and revising the sketches. And then we work towards a sign-off from the client. And this sign-off from the client is not only for the client and a start for our production, it's at the same time a sign-off for ourselves, that we know that we're on the same page. Well, on the left here, you can see one of the black and white sketches that we send in first, and the right one is with client feedback and colored. And we wanted to show you these. This is a project we did for Schiphol Airport. It's the Dutch airport. And we worked together with an ad agency called Sunshine and Sausages. And we like this example because later on in a few slides, we'll show you the result of this one. And it clearly shows how close we actually get to the sketch and the general idea when we start.
Yes, so another thing we actively work on is having clear responsibilities. That we stay focused on your own responsibility and your own expertise. It's actually to avoid chaos and confusion, and it is really important when we work in bigger teams. It's good to know for people who to go, to who they can go, and who is responsible in case they have advice needed or they have questions. And this is also an important part in the next step of our process, which is the set design. I think this is the most fun part of a project. Before a few years back, we mostly worked only with the two of us on a project. But after a while, jobs got bigger and bigger, and we needed help from other people. So now we have this great team of people helping us out, and they have lots of patience, because this part of the process is the most time-consuming part. To give you an example, it can sometimes take up to 1 month to work on the set design and to build everything. But it's also a little bit depending on the amount of details or the amount of images. To quickly go through the list, we always start making like lots of lists to get an overview about the amount of work which actually needs to be done. And after that, we start the digital process. We work on the computer. We work on the 2D designs and the 3D designs with Illustrator and Cinema 4D. We source materials, which are actually almost always paper. So we have our regular shops where we go to. After that, we start cutting all the digital templates, and we start to build everything, and then everything becomes alive and is ready for the next part of the process, which is the photography.
And Gidi plays a lead role in the set design, as well. I play more of a lead role in the photography. That said, we work really intertwined. We both work on the set design. We both work on the photography. This is the general guideline. In the photography, we start out with set styling, with Gidi styling up the sets together with the team. I focus more on the light setup. We head over to the photography. If we shoot it in separate elements, we go to composing, retouching, and finally color correction, which we focus on together again. And funny enough, we've been working with a few CGI 3D artists lately, and we also thought it was really funny that one of them said, hey, this is your whole process. It's like real-life rendering, which I thought was kind of funny because it's kind of the opposite of the origin. So to give you a little bit of context, we've got, on the Schiphol campaign we worked on, they made a little behind-the-scenes video.
You sent me a card from paradise with coconut trees and a turquoise sea. A nice little note that closed with X's and O's. A sweet little tease from you to me. You bring me the sunshine.
So here you can see the one of the visuals we did for Schiphol. We did a whole series for them, but this was one of them. And if you remember the sketch, this gets really close to the sketch, and it shows a little bit how we work with the pre-production. And also this image, we shot this as a whole because we really think that the little details of real shadowing and balance between the objects creates a good image. But we also shot these elements separately, so it can be very broadly used. So here you can see a little bit how this specific campaign was used. And it's really fun if you deliver it in loose layers. I mean, they printed it on tuk-tuks and big billboards, and it was all through our airport. And this is also one of the kind of perks you get as working as creative. We love seeing our work come to life in such a way, and that's that little thrill that gives this extra motivation. This is another project we wanted to highlight. This is a project we did for Clarisonic. It's a cleansing device by L'Oreal. And this was actually quite exciting for us when we got started. This was one of the projects we worked on very large-scale sets. And these is a series of 5, and these were actually wrapped around packaging for their holiday packaging of last year. And we didn't have any experience as packaging designers, so there were lots of new challenges in this project which we needed to face. And one of the challenges also is that these sets were that elaborate that we had to work with quite a large team. But we worked with around 8 to 9 people for a whole month on these buildings because they were so detailed and so elaborate and so big, which was an interesting thing for us as a duo because we became more of a directing couple and managing the other creatives than that we were actually hands-on illustrators ourselves. Yeah, and here you can see how it was used in the packaging. And it was a great project to work on and very inspiring to work together and get that creative freedom.
Yeah, so we go a little bit way back to the past. We've done quite some work for the Dutch market, and we had some European clients, but we felt that we were ready for a next step. So we got in contact with our current rep in the United States, Art of Motion. A funny little fact is that they actually have a lot of duos under their roster, including us. But one of the first jobs that we did for the United States was Oreo, and we felt very excited because everybody knows the cookie. It's a fun and exciting, playful brand. So yeah, we were really looking forward to take on that job. And together with the agency 360i, they gave us actually almost carte blanche for this project. We got like a cookie and a headline, and we were free to do with it what we wanted. So in our process, we always start thinking of what would be the best approach to approach a certain project, or what would be the best technique. And in this case, we have to deal with lettering and like a really small cookie. And because we use paper mostly as a material, we were a little bit restricted by the size of the cookie. So what we decided is that we made everything out of proportion, so we could add the details we wanted, and then that the set stays as real as possible. As you can see, on the top corner is you can see like the giant set we made, and we made also a giant dummy cookie to place in the set to get the real shadows. Yeah, after a while, we started to look back at this project, and we were a little bit in doubt, like, was this really the right approach? Because it felt a bit excessive to make such large-scale sets for just a small cookie. But yeah, I think it was the right approach for us, because we felt really the importance that everything was handmade and that you could see all the details in the paper, in the set. And it also is like an important part of Oreo, that it's playful and happy. So yeah, for us it was the right decision.
Here's another project, and it's a little bit of a prelude for our next subject. It's a project we did for Fanta, and this was actually not they didn't have a big budget, but we really felt the importance of getting a brand like Fanta in our portfolio. So when it came with it, there was a lot of creative freedom. We only had to keep their new logo in the set, and we had some colors that we had to work with. Obviously, we started to do the art direction a little bit in the style of what's pleasing for Fanta. But we felt it was a great way for us to expand our portfolio. Another thing that's good about this project is it shows how I combine my 3D shapes that I design, and how Gidi then adds this 2D layer on top. So pretty much I designed the base shapes of these, for instance, the rocket. And Gidi then designs the other shapes in Illustrator, and that we then translate to cutting templates, which finally results in this result. So with that in mind, we want to talk about the importance of free work. So we really find very important to take time and not get lost in commissioned work, and take that time to experiment, innovate, and refine our work. I think this is a very important part to develop one's style and to get that little bit further and to stay relevant within design. So a very direct example is these visuals we made a few years ago. At the time, we were working a lot for fashion magazines, and we were getting a lot of briefs where they had 6 to 12 products which we had to put into the visuals. And we felt this was very limiting. We noticed that the products were always taking a very dominant role, and it was very hard to build aesthetically pleasing sets around these 6 to 12 products. So we noticed, and we discussed together, that what we were missing was a more minimalistic style and a single product focus, so one hero product in the visual. So we decided, well, let's just make that as a free work project. So we sourced a bottle from a PR agency, and we always wanted to make minimalistic paper flowers. So, well, this is the result of that free work project. And actually, this instantly led, well, not instantly, but it took a while, and it led to the project you see above. And this is a project we did for Stylist magazine. And this was great because we actually saw in their brief, when they approached us, we saw that specific visual from Flora by Gucci that we made before, and they referenced that and said, hey guys, this is what we're looking for. And they came, they do a column every week in their magazine, and they have a single product which they highlight. So they came to us a few months, and every week we got a different product with a description, and we had full creative freedom to build a set around that. And this was for us a perfect way to expand our portfolio with more of this kind of work and with a more minimalistic tone around it.
One of the last projects we wanted to highlight is the one behind us. When I was still in art school, one of my dreams was like to become this fashion photographer working for Vogue Italia. But actually, a few years back, this dream came already true, and we were approached by the Vogue Italia to work on quite a big project for their September issue. And it was really funny because the project actually included models, as you can see. So we created like colorful sets and all these elements, and yeah, it was a little world for the 20 designer Barbies we got to photograph. And this was a great way, it was great to see how our backgrounds like came this literally together in one new output.
So now we want to talk a little bit about what we're exploring now, the future and the things and the hurdles that we're facing at the moment. And one thing that we're actively discussing at the moment is, should we grow? Should we grow from a duo to maybe a small to medium-sized creative company? We started to assess the pros and cons of actually growing to become a larger company. And we noticed a lot of pros of being a duo. One is we have a very flexible business model in a sense that we can grow and shrink to the size to fit pretty much any kind of project. This entails that we don't have any employees, so we don't have any fixed high monthly costs, which means lower risk. But mostly, it means that we can take that time that we were discussing earlier to experiment and create new work and decide, hey, we want to work on editorials now, and not be forced to actually always take commercial advertising work. But of course, it also has some cons. And the cons being actually is that sometimes we get too much work and that we just can't take it on. And it's horrible to say no to jobs. And definitely if you're working on a job and the client that you always wanted to work for, then just after you already said yes, approaches you with a great project, and you have to say no. Another thing is, when you work with freelancers, you always take the risk is that they could actually leave and do something else, that they join a different design company who does actually have fixed employees, or that they're on vacation or have their own job. And sometimes you become dependent of certain skills from certain freelancers, and of course this could be definitely a problem if you're starting a production. Another thing is sometimes we take on too many tasks ourselves, because the benefits is if you have somebody incorporated into your company is that they actually know how things work. They're completely worked in. And sometimes we take on, for instance, like project managing. It's very important that somebody really knows the way you work, that they can actually handle the project management. And too often we decide, well, we'll just handle it ourselves because it's going to take longer to explain it to a freelancer how we work. Another thing we are actively discussing at the moment is the world of 3D software. We are really impressed with what we see the last few years, what's happening in the world of CGI. We really feel that the world of CGI has grown now to a way that it's so accessible for designers, and the techniques are definitely more capable, and this opens it up to a whole new world of amazing artworks coming out of there. So to give that an example, this is a project we did for Victor and Rolf, and we actually made this from paper. And we decided, we have a representative here in Poland as well, and they're called Analog Digital. And they approached us and they said, hey guys, how would you like to team up with a post-production house here in Poland called Televisor and try to recreate this image in 3D software and see how close we can get and see what we can do. So we said, that's a great idea. We love the idea of that, and we love to see how long this will take and how this will work. So we took the role of art directors and directors in this project, and we made this storyboard for them. And we also sent them just snapshots of how we actually built this. I built the flowers. So we showed them the layers, we delivered the paper textures, And if you see on the right side here, you can see how they remodeled these in 3D. One thing we did notice, though, is the visual you saw before from start to end took us around 2 days. Just building all the flowers. We're pretty fast at building flowers, because we do a lot of them. And photography and post-production. We did, however, notice that recreating that paper look and feel and adding the irregularities in 3D is quite time-intensive. That said, once you actually have them modeled in 3D and you've got the renders and the structures right, the world of opportunities is huge. You can do a lot more with it than within, for instance, stop motion or analog techniques. So the next one is a little video. So maybe we can turn on the music. And that's the result of this collaboration. And to be honest, we love the result of this, and this is something we're definitely exploring more in the future. We want to expand in that realm and see what the possibilities are and how we can combine that with our current work and style. On a final note, we want to talk about, just to close this presentation, the importance of creating a good working environment. I think definitely as a couple, but in any situation, it's so important to create that good working environment and actively take time to take a break or to do some hula hooping or whatever you like. And we definitely feel this stimulates motivation and creativity. So as a closing remark, always remind yourself, take a break, less stress, and thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.